Welcome and thank you for coming to the announcement of the winner of the third NIF Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay Book Prize. New India Foundation was set up many years ago to encourage the writing of non-fiction books about post-1947 India. Most people's history tends to stop with Tryst with Destiny, but there's so much that has happened in independent India that needs to be chronicled by scholars and known by the lay readers. The trustees of New India Foundation, Nandan Nilekani, Ramachandra Guha, Niraja Gopal Jayal, Srinath Raghavan and me, Manish Sabharwal, have always felt that a great complement to our fellowship program would be a book prize. And this is our third book prize. The book prize jury is the trustees and Nayanjot Lahiri, who is a professor at Ashoka University. The first prize was a great book on campaign finance by Miran Vaishnav. The second prize chronicled putting together of India's first electoral list by Ornit Shani. This year we had 100 book nominations. We had a short list of 12 books, which represent the diversity of non-fiction writing. We brought that down to a 6-book shortlist, which included Bottle of Lies by Catherine Eban, Midnight Machines by Arun Mohan Sukumar, Mobilizing the Marginalized by Amit Ahuja, A Chequered Brilliance, The Many Lives of Krishna Menon by Jairam Ramesh, Wild Himalayas by Stephen Alter, and Unquiet Rivers by Arupjit Saikia. It was very difficult for the jury because all of these books represented the best of Indian non-fiction. They were about geography, they were about culture, they were about biography, they were about the intersection of the various different stands that make India one of the most interesting countries in the world. This difficulty with the books and their quality this year led the jury to award a joint prize this year. And the two winners are Mobilizing the Marginalized by Amit Ahuja and A Chequered Brilliance by Jairam Ramesh. My congratulations to both the authors. They are splendid works of scholarship, research, writing, really dazzle the jury in terms of what they produced and what we hope all of the readers will enjoy. My congratulations to them. We thank the jury, we thank the publishers, and we thank all the various writers from New India Foundation. Our third NIF Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay belongs to Amit Ahuja and Jairam Ramesh.
Hello, my name is Amit Ahuja. I am the author of Mobilizing the Marginalized, Ethnic Parties Without Ethnic Movements. I am delighted and very honored to be chosen for the Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay New India Foundation Book Prize for this year. I want to express my deepest gratitude to the members of the jury, as well as the New India Foundation, for selecting my book for this prestigious prize. Democracy holds a promise for historically marginalized groups. It gives them the opportunity to mobilize, to seek political and social inclusion. Dalits in India have tested this promise. Dalits are perhaps the world's largest historically marginalized group. They are socially excluded, stigmatized, and disproportionately poor. And yet, Dalits have mobilized socially through community organizing, socio-religious movements, and protests. They've also mobilized electorally through their caste-based parties and multi-caste parties. This process of mobilization is ongoing. My book tells the story of Dalit mobilization and its consequences. Very early in the research process, I understood that for me to be able to explain social and electoral mobilization and comprehend how social mobilization influences electoral mobilization, I will have to immerse myself in the lived experience of Dalits. I decided to study Dalit mobilization across 4 large Indian states. Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu are home to India's long-standing Dalit movements. Uttar Pradesh and Bihar are home to India's most electorally successful and prominent Dalit parties. Between them, these four states have 43% of India's Dalit population. My journey took me to Dalit localities, neighborhoods, across villages, small towns, and large cities in these four states. Over 10 years, I observed electoral campaigns, conducted 400 one-on-one interviews, 80 focus groups. I observed petitioning as well as protesting activities of Dalits. I spoke to Dalit social activists, party leaders, party workers. And the evidence that this effort generated allowed me to explain why Dalit mobilization is distinct, why Dalit political parties are more successful electorally in some parts of India, but not in others, why Dalits vote their caste in some states, but not in others, and why Dalit representation and representational gains have not always translated into welfare gains for this group. Dalits are marginalized across all states, including the four states that I study. And I came face to face with this marginalization very early in the research process. I still remember it was late afternoon and we were trying to finish our focus groups for that day in Uttar Pradesh. We were trying to locate the Jatav locality in a village. We were lost. Fortunately, we ran into a small boy who was willing to help us. He took us to the Jatav locality and we set up the focus group. This boy of about 6 or 7 stuck around and was fascinated by this process. And when we started asking questions, we discovered that none of our focus group participants was willing to respond. There was silence. Ramesh, my field assistant, picked up on the problem. He requested the little boy to leave. It's one thing to read about subordination. It's an entirely different matter to come face to face with it. Here was a boy of 6 years who belonged to the Thakur dominant caste in that village and who had these 12 grown-ups so petrified that they were unwilling to open their mouths in front of him. And yet, Dalit politics is not a politics of victimhood or politics of revenge. Instead, it's a politics of voice, politics of avaz. Dalits have mobilized to demand inclusion. They seek recognition, dignity, selfhood. The journey for this book has been an incredible one. It has made me into a better scholar, a better human being. Once again, I want to thank the New India Foundation and members of the jury for this recognition. Thank you so much.
Well, I was very pleasantly surprised to get a phone call from Manish Sabharwal a few days ago. And I thank the New India Foundation for this recognition, or should I say, co-recognition. Over the past 3 years, I've written 3 biographies on 3 very compelling, charismatic, but also very controversial personalities. The first was on Indira Gandhi, the environmentalist. The second was B.N. Huxa, who was her alter ego and ideological compass. And the most recent one, for which this award has been given, has been on Krishna Menon, V.K. Krishna Menon. And I thoroughly enjoyed writing these biographies. But I must say that writing biographies on political figures, public figures in India, has been mostly an exercise in either hagiography or in demonology. There have been a few great biographers in India, and I must mention three who have had a great influence on my own approach. Sarvepalli Gopal's trilogy on Jawaharlal Nehru and his biography of his father, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, are of course iconic. Rajmohan Gandhi's three biographies on Gandhi, on Rajaji, and on Sardar Patel, of course, are masterpieces. And in more recent times, of course, we've had Ram Guha, whose biographies of Warrior Elvin and two books on Gandhi have become part of essential reading. But other than these three, I'm hard put to think of anybody else who approaches biography the way, for example, the great biographers of the world, Robert Caro, Roy Jenkins, Walter Isaacson, have done. Now, all the three biographies that I've written are based on primary, contemporaneously written archival material. They're not based on interviews, recollections, memories. They're not biographies of biographies, so to speak. They're not based on conversations or recollections or retrospective wisdom. So mine have been narrative biographies. They're not judgmental biographies. And I must add that I've had no special access to the archival material. This is material available to anybody in India and abroad, if only you have the time and interest and inclination to get into these archives. And many of these archives, in fact, all these archives, barring the National Archives in Delhi and the Nehru Memorial Museum, everything else is digital. I mean, for example, in the Krishna Menon book, I've used extensively material available at the archives, not in the great universities of Oxford and Cambridge. Of course, there is material from these great universities, but from the relatively less known University of Durham, where the archives of a former UK High Commissioner, Malcolm MacDonald, resides. So there are many such libraries across the world. And for the Krishna Menon book particularly, I've been able to get access to libraries in Australia, Russia, England, of course, the United States, Canada, and India. And the Indian archive, of course, is not digital. I've had to go there physically, and luckily this biography was completed before the corona pandemic took over. So this is not a judgmental biography. This is, I do not set out in my biographies, to provide counterfactual history. I must also say that I'm very conscious of the fact that I belong to a political party. And I do not allow, to the best of my ability, my political affiliation to interfere with my writing. I see these biographies not as political statements of my political ideology, but these are what I wish to be contributions to the world of scholarship. Now, it just so happens that these three individuals whom I have selected are eminent personalities of what might be called the Nehruvian era of Indian politics, which begins somewhere in the mid-30s. So I thank Manish and I thank the New India Foundation. Incidentally, Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay figures somewhat in this biography of Krishna Menon, because Krishna Menon and she were good friends. They were colleagues in the Congress Socialist Party. A remarkable collection of young men and one woman, Kamaladevi, in the Congress Socialist Party that was set up in 1934. Jayaprakash Narayan, Achyut Patwardhan, Yusuf Mehr Ali, Minu Masani, who later turned out to be, an extreme right-winger, but he started off life as a great admirer of the Soviet Union. And then Kamaladevi and S.M. Joshi. There were many people who the leading lights of Indian public life in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, who cut their teeth, so to speak, in the Congress Socialist Party. And Krishna Menon happened to be the CSP's representative in London. So let me thank Manish once again, and let me thank the New India Foundation for this recognition. And I'm truly delighted that I've had this opportunity. One rule I've always followed in public life is never to accept honorary degrees or awards. I've had to make one exception in 2002 when my alma mater IIT Bombay gave me an award which is given to alumnus, to alumni. And this is the second occasion. I've had to make this because I believe that this is a recognition of the personality. Krishna Menon is a recognition of the book, not so much the writer. I'm just the instrument of having put together all this material that's been lying around, waiting for some historian to put it all together and make a coherent narrative. I'm no historian. I'm just a public figure, a political personality, who since 2014, thanks to the mandates of 2014 and 2019, have had a lot of time to produce these biographies and other books. So thank you once again.